Boy, oh boy, welcome into the show, everybody. My name is Mark Farzetta. This is the Farzy Show presented by MyBookie, mybookie.ag. The Eagles, if you missed our emergency show yesterday, to use that tired phrase in this industry, the digital world, emergency podcast, emergency show. The Eagles look like they're set to hire Kellen Moore as their next offensive coordinator. I'll give you today some my takes on it. I'm kind of on the record already, though. Friday when we did the show, I talked about Kellen Moore's name coming up and said, nah. that was kind of my take on it. And knowing something could possibly happen through the weekend, I was thinking, you know what? This is probably going to be a long haul, but I wanted to at least just give you my take on it. And I said to you guys, don't come away with it with the idea of at least this guy has experience, meaning not just Kellen Moore, but anybody that the Eagles were going to hire. At least this guy has experience in the NFL as a play caller. Don't have that be one of the best things that you could say about whoever the Eagles were going to hire as their next offensive coordinator. And I thought this was going to be a long, drawn-out process. I thought it was going to take a long time. I thought maybe after the Super Bowl, this was going to bleed into maybe the new league year, potentially. I just felt like this wasn't going to be a quick fix. Sure enough, Vic Fangio was a very quick fix. That was somebody that I think they had that waiting in the wings from the time the season ended. And I thought that when it came to the offensive coordinator, there's something that was going to drag out. Another interview with Cliff Kingsbury. Another interview with Kellen Moore. That's where I thought we were going to go with this. A couple of interviews with people we never heard of before. Stuff like that. Not the case at all. Here we are, the day going into Conference Championship Sunday. Late Saturday night, news breaks from Adam Schefter saying that the Eagles are signing Kellen Moore as their next offensive coordinator. And I went, nah. Because from the outside looking in, following Kellen Moore's career, the guy had the incredible start to his career in Dallas, where he really seemed to help Mike McCarthy revitalize Dak Prescott and that Cowboy offense. And sooner or later, the third year of his offensive coordinatorship down there, third year of his tenure, he's got them as the number one offense in both points and yards per game. Came out of the gates hot, if you remember. They were first in yards, sixth in points, the first time he was ever the play caller in 2019 with the Dallas Cowboys. Then they have a drop-off year after Dak Prescott, I think it was his broken thumb, where that ended up hitting the fan, unfortunately. Andy Dalton ended up coming in, and the offense obviously takes a hit. But then in 2021, that's where they come out, and they're ranked number one in the NFL in both points and yards. 2022, he's running things again. They take another hit. They drop down to 11th in yards per game, and then they also just measly fourth in the NFL in points per game in 2022. They fizzle out in the playoffs. Somebody had to go. Kellen Moore was the guy. Now, our guest today, RJ Ochoa, who writes for Blogging Them Boys, he's been a guest on the show many times before. He joined me yesterday. We aired the interview already. If you haven't seen it, we're going to play it for you again today. But he summed it up rather well. It was basically like you can't have Mike McCarthy as your head coach and never expect him to call plays. So sooner or later, when push came to shove and there had to be a scapegoat, if Kellen Moore wasn't hired anywhere else as a head coach, you were going to have Mike McCarthy call the plays. So Kellen Moore more or less became the scapegoat after the 2022 season, and then he goes to the Chargers last year where Justin Herbert's injured, only played 13 games. He has Easton Stick as his quarterback to wind down the season. They did not win one game with him as your starting quarterback, including that 63-point game that the Vegas Raiders put up on the LA Chargers. But even with Justin Herbert, as we covered on Friday, Herbert's numbers during those 13 games with Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator, they took a hit. They also had injuries in LA as well. So it's difficult to discern. So this is my ultimate takeaway. It's a good hire. I have questions, plenty of questions. How's he going to play with Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and how's this going to work with Nick Sirianni? And Nick Sirianni said in his press conference, as we know, it's not his offense, it's our offense, whoever the next OC is going to be. The bottom line is this. And yes, it does factor in the idea of Brian Johnson just being your play caller. If you would have told me when they let go of Brian Johnson, or even during the Eagles' downfall, even during their horrible end of the season, if you would have told me at that point that the Eagles were going to bring in, they're going to fire Brian Johnson. They're going to bring in somebody who's got 5 years of experience as a play caller in the NFL. 5 years experience. And in that time, he's had a number 1 overall ranked offense in both points and yards. Like, oh, yeah, my attention. Okay, go on. He's a younger guy. Oh, okay. All right. He likes to run up the score. He likes to put up points. You know, what offensive coordinator doesn't. But he's going to be your offensive play caller next year. Not Nick Sirianni. Not Cliff Kingsbury, who I know a lot of people were all about, but for me, no. I even put this as a better hire than Cliff Kingsbury. I would say, okay, he's failed with a lot of quarterbacks. Let's see what they could do here with as a head coach and play caller. Let's see what this guy could do. I guess just as an offensive coordinator, we'll see. Right? Would have been one of those unfortunates in terms of optimism. I would have dare utter, okay, but Kellen Moore in this hire, I can put my stamp of approval and say, good hire. This isn't a cure-all. This isn't, Super Bowl bound. I don't know who would have really done that, given they have to come in here and they have to work with Nick Sirianni. They have to listen to their analytic department, i.e. Jeffrey Lurie. For me, it's a good hire. If you would have told me when everything was breaking down and the sky was falling at the end of the year, that this would be your offensive coordinator going into next year, I just go, all right. He's got experience. He's got a good track record. Now how's it going to work with Jalen Hurts? Having him come in, one of the best things I have seen about one of the things he likes to have from his quarterbacks is them under center. I love that. But one of the reasons I love that is because you could set up play action so much better when you're under center as opposed to the read option style of play. I would like sometimes, and this is one of my big gripes with the Chip Kelly era, is every once in a while, hand the ball to a running back where the running back's got his feet moving already instead of just standing there flat foot. That's one of the reasons I like being under center. Unfortunately, he doesn't really like running the football too much. That's not exactly his MO. They like to sling it, as we know with our Philadelphia Eagles. So I put this as a good hire. I'm not blown away. There's a lot that has to be proven because I know and this is the other thing. Probably if you would have told me at that time when everything was going to hell that the Eagles were going to hire Kellen Moore, and I looked more into his background and, talked to some more people, I would say, all right, you know what? Obviously, they had a pretty damn good offense while he was there when he was in Dallas. This year, they, of course, went to a whole new level, as we know. But if you would have told me that they would have brought him in, I probably would have done a backflip in this regard, that you had the experience, you had the track record there, but how's he going to play with all the cooks in this kitchen? No matter who it was. You could have Bill Walsh come in here, and I'd be like, okay, that's great, but how's it all going to work with all these cooks in the kitchen? Because that's the caveat. When you have so many people that have influence on what goes on in game day situations, on game day, how's that end? Who do you judge? We always talk about blaming, whether it's Nick Sirianni, whether it's Brian Johnson, whether it's Jalen Hurts checks at the line, whether it was his audibles, whether it was the analytic department having a little too much sway, whether it was Jeffrey Lurie, whatever the case may be, all these cooks in the kitchen. Now Kellen Moore is one of them. From what it sounded like with Nick Sirianni, he's going to have control of the offense. Kellen Moore is going to have control of the offense. All right. It's a good hire. I'm not doing backflips because I know that the Eagles like to have a lot of people with their fingerprints on the game plan and the way the offense is run. So, it's tough. There's no move really that the Eagles could have made. They're like, oh my God, this is incredible. Savior of a move, But it then puts us in this category. If you go into last year and you only have 1 year of experience with Sean Desai, who had that 1 year of experience in the position of being a defensive coordinator. And then you have Brian Johnson, who never had the experience of being an offensive coordinator or offensive play caller, obviously. You only have 1 year experience between the two going into last year. This year, you've kind of made up for that. 5 years under the belt, as we know, of Kellen Moore, and 20 years of Vic Fangio. Not too bad. Not too bad. So when it comes to experience, Nick Sirianni is certainly surrounded by experience this time around. Now, here's the unfortunate thing. With an experienced play caller, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, and this offensive line, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's say Jason Kelce's back, and even if he's not, it's still probably what will be a pretty damn good offensive line. Whoever your offensive coordinator is, especially if he has experience in the position and understands the rhythm and the ebbs and flows of the game in terms of having to make those calls into your quarterback and understanding that, having a good feel for it already and already having success at the NFL level of being able to do that, then you're going to put up points. So let's live in a world right now where the Eagles' defense is better. Let's live in a world right now where the Eagles' offense is better. And let's live in a world where you have a deep playoff run next season. Is Kellen Moore back with the Eagles? Or is Kellen Moore the head coach somewhere else? And do you go through this whole process again? Because what's not going to happen, unfortunately, is the Eagles do well. The Eagles win some playoff games. The Eagles even win the NFC East. Let's get nuts. They win the NFC East. They win a couple playoff games. You're going to fire Nick Sirianni and promote Kellen Moore? That doesn't happen. The only time that happens is when you struggle at the beginning of the season, you fire the head coach, then Kellen Moore becomes the head coach. Or Vic Fangio becomes the interim, goes back to D.C., and then Kellen Moore takes over and has a whole full offseason. That doesn't happen either. The problem is, and this is my issue after the press conference last week, was that you have now put yourself in this vicious cycle of, oh, okay, now we're just going to groom offensive coordinators into head coaches for other teams while Nick Sirianni stays here because he knows how to play ball with Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. That's not a recipe for success. And that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. For more on Kellen Moore, let's get to RJ Ochoa from an interview yesterday. This was before Conference Championship Sunday. We will talk about Conference Championship Sunday coming up in a second because it was one hell of a Sunday. Good Lord. You come out of the gates with the Chiefs and the Ravens in Balmer, right there by the Chesapeake, and those quarterbacks are already incredible. They were on another planet yesterday. Lamar Jackson obviously catching his own pass. Lamar Jackson to a wide open Lamar Jackson, that whole thing. Watching Patrick Mahomes, his escapability, Lamar Jackson's escapability, was taken for an 8-yard sack, slipped out of it, threw a 30-yard touchdown pass. Just no problem. No problem whatsoever. Travis Kelce doing whatever the hell he damn well pleases. Tay-Tay fans had a good day yesterday. Oh, the Tay-Tay fans. And then Lions and 49ers in Santa Clara yesterday. Holy Stromboli. I think we all love Dan Campbell, but I'll tell you this way. Oh, my goodness. RG3, I think, summed it up rather well. He said, hey, sometimes biting kneecaps means kicking the field goal. And I think in that fourth quarter, that was the time to kick the field goal. We all love, going for it on fourth down. We all love, 2-point conversions and all that jazz, man. But holy wow. Not going for the field goal. Late in that fourth quarter, 7:50 something remaining in the fourth quarter, not going for the field goal. Ballsy. We'll get to it all. Coming up a little bit later in the show. But as for right now, let's get a little bit more on Kellen Moore's history. But before we do that, let me tell you guys about the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app to your phone, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to go to the big game, you want to go to the concert, you want to go to the comedy show, you want to go to the theater, download the Game Time app to your phone. Create an account, use promo code Farzy. That's promo code Farzy on the Game Time app and have yourself a good time at the event. You can preview the seats ahead of time. You can view those seats. You can also get the Game Time guarantee, which means if you go on another ticket site and you find tickets for less money in the same section, same row for less, they'll get you back 110% of the difference at the Game Time app. So download the Game Time app to your phone. Get the guaranteed lowest price Use promo code Farzy, and they'll give you $20 off your first purchase. How about that? $20 off your first purchase at the Game Time app. Use promo code Farzy. All right, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line. Talk to our friend RJ Ochoa, blogging the boys about all things Kellen Moore. Once again, this was taped yesterday before the conference championship game, so we literally only talk about what he put on the smoker before that. And we also talk about how the Cowboys will never see the conference championship. So that's fun. Those two things are fun. All right, here's RJ Ochoa on what he remembers about Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. A couple of interesting things you've already written. People could check it out on bloggingtheboys.com. This interesting piece about the Eagles making this move. And in this piece, I will say this is fantastic because I think both teams and both fan bases felt the exact same way about retaining their head coaches. Cowboys fans happy about Sirianni staying. And, of course, Eagles fans happy about Mike McCarthy staying. People can read that story, of course, on bloggingtheboys.com. But Kellen Moore supposedly is getting the job as the Eagles offensive coordinator. Tell me if I'm wrong. I remember Kellen Moore getting the job as the OC in Dallas, and it was like he was this great prodigy. People were all excited about what he was going to bring to the Dallas Cowboy offense, and the numbers certainly showed that was true. But what went wrong in Dallas? Why did he eventually have to move on from the Dallas Cowboys?
So Kellen's history with the Cowboys actually kind of involves the Eagles. So Kellen is a Scott Linehan disciple, was with the Detroit Lions, didn't get drafted. At one point was the winningest quarterback in college football history at Boise State. They have a blue field. I don't know if you know that. It's a big deal. And so Scott Linehan fell in love with him. And Scott Linehan became the Cowboys passing game coordinator, offensive coordinator. So during that time, brought Kellen as a player with the Cowboys. And you might recall in 2015 when Tony Romo was hurt and missed 12 games, Kellen started a couple of games and things didn't really go well. He actually, at the time, set the Cowboys franchise record for most passing yards in a single game and some garbage time stuff against Kirk Cousins' Washington team. Anyway, he kind of hung out as a player. And in 2016, the Cowboys trotted him out as Tony Romo's primary backup quarterback, and he broke his ankle in training camp. And that vaulted Dak Prescott to the QB2 role, and then Tony Romo got hurt, and everything ever since is history. And that kind of pushed Kellen to this, backup sort of role. In 2017, Cooper Rush, as an undrafted free agent, outperformed Kellen and was QB2. And Dallas had Kellen on the practice squad, roster, and the Eagles reportedly wanted to poach Blake Jarwin from the Cowboys practice squad the year before they drafted Dallas Goedert, of all people. So Dallas had to finally cut Kellen Moore and promote Blake Jarwin to protect him. And I say all that to say they kept him around because they really valued his offensive mind, even after Scott Linehan left. And the very next year, in 2018, he became the team's quarterbacks coach. And 1 year later, 2019, the offensive coordinator. That was obviously the last year of Jason Garrett. And he's the son of a coach. You'll hear that a million different times, kind of a football family, football obsessive, football nerd. And there's no question that the Cowboys experienced high levels of success from an offensive standpoint under him. As far as what went wrong, Mike McCarthy had a quote, and I know you and I have talked about this at the Combine, about how Kellen wanted to score 1 million points and light up the scoreboard, and he wanted to run the ball, and everybody just focused on the run the ball portion. But now with the regular season completely behind us, it's clear that McCarthy wanted to play kind of overall football from an offensive standpoint, obviously serving as the play caller, and lean on their defense. And while the Cowboys are not playing today, I think that he was successful. I think Mike McCarthy called his shot and executed it. As much as I'm upset with him, and Cowboys fans are, he really proved that he had a better overall disposition in place for the offense than Kellen. And granted, it's a very small sample size. What Kellen did with Justin Herbert, everybody thought they were just going to take over and run the NFL. That didn't happen. And so I don't know that I believe Kellen is a fraud. I just think that I think he just wanted to run out the gate every single week, and you can't do that throughout the course of an entire 4-game football game.
Who is he as an offensive coordinator? So you say you got to light up the score and all that, but is he a guy that can come in and maybe help a guy like Jalen Hurts get back to the MVP status, or at least MVP caliber play that he had a year ago?
I mean, there's no real track record of that, right? And that would be not my individual concern, but maybe yours. the two quarterbacks he's worked with are Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert. And, we can sit here and we can argue and debate who's better and whatever, but two consensus top 10 guys, right? And he kind of made Justin Herbert worse. And again, we're talking 1 year of a sample size, but apart from Kellen Moore, Dak Prescott just had the finest individual season he's ever had in the NFL. He's going to pick up MVP votes, right? Probably be second in that competition. So Kellen's not really known for development, whereas that's kind of what Mike McCarthy is known for relative to the Cowboys side of this discussion. Well, with not just Aaron Rodgers, but players like Matt Flynn and stuff like that. And so I don't know. I've never really seen that happen. And it was a unique situation in that the quarterbacks who Kellen coached for the most part in Dallas were people who he shared a roster with and people who beat him out and pushed him into the coaching profession, because it wasn't just Dak Prescott, but it was Cooper Rush, as mentioned. That was the real straw that broke the back of Kellen's career as a player. And so it's an awkward thing, right? To have dudes who beat you out, then have to take instruction from you. So we haven't really seen, he's still incredibly young. And I think that that's part of what this is too. And so I'm really fascinated. I don't know if you recall, but Kellen also interviewed for the Eagles head coaching job when it went to Nick Sirianni. So the incestual nature of all this is really interesting.
It certainly is. Is there anything that really jumped out to you that impressed you about Kellen Moore in your time covering him? Did you find any of the praise that he was getting nationally and even head coaching interview to be warranted?
At the time, it certainly felt that way. In 2019, that was his first year as the offensive coordinator. And I believe the Cowboys went 3-0 to start that season. And I don't think that Dak Prescott had a single incompletion in the third quarters of those 3 games. I know it's a really specific thing.
Yeah.
And it felt like a revolution was arriving offensively. They were doing all these things, but with the benefit of hindsight, that was the first full season of Amari Cooper. And I think, at the time we did attribute it to him, but John Kitna, another former Cowboys and Lions quarterback, was their quarterback's coach. And Dak Prescott always spoke so glowingly of John. And he was somebody who really developed Dak, somebody who really kind of helped Dak work on the fundamental values of playing the quarterback position, as opposed to Kellen just serving as the offensive play caller. Obviously, those are different things, and not to take anything away from Kellen. But again, with the benefit of hindsight, we did see Kellen, to me, seems like somebody who has a great idea and kind of great at writing game scripts. But the moment, you kind of get that, first punch in the mouth, isn't really great at adapting. And we saw that down the stretch of the last few seasons from the Cowboys offensively. In 21, when they won the NFC East, and obviously the first season of Nick Sirianni, they were on fire, but they really sputtered to the finish line from an offensive standpoint. And in 2022, same kind of thing. It just felt like they ran out of the magic touch. And certainly couldn't hang with the big boys like San Francisco, as we both know. And so we haven't really seen that part of Kellen's game evolve, but obviously he's deeper into his coaching career and has seen a few more different things.
What do you remember from that 2021 season? Because that was the year that the Cowboys pretty much swept it in the offensive category, number 1 in yards, number 1 in points. What stuck out to you about Kellen Moore in 2021?
I will say probably a high level of resilience, because and maybe people don't think of that when it comes to Kellen, but everybody thought like, oh man, the Cowboys drafted CeeDee Lamb. They're going to have him and Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. The 3 of them played like 3 games together in 21 for a variety of reasons, whether it was injuries and the COVID list was still a much more populated thing on a week-to-week basis. And so they kind of had to find ways to thrive. And, Kellen was still, it's just been so hard. He's always kind of been the boy wonder for the Cowboys. And I think that and that's just kind of a victim of circumstance sort of thing, because he was a player for the team. And so it's hard to see him, not necessarily in a mature sense, but in a more evolved sense. And so there was a game that year, speaking of the COVID list, it was a Thursday night game where Dallas was in New Orleans, and Mike McCarthy found himself on the COVID list. And everybody kind of thought like, oh man, let Kellen be the interim head coach. Like, let's kind of see what this looks like, because he was on the same trajectory that Jason Garrett was in terms of, dude who joined the Cowboys coaching staff and it looked like he would be their next head coach. That went to Dan Quinn though instead. And so it always felt like Kellen was just this, this awkward third wheel relative to coaching experience and NFL experience in the same room, in the same kind of coaching box as McCarthy and Quinn. But I do think he found ways to thrive throughout that. And I do think he was able to connect with his offensive players. But again, some of that was the fact that he was a teammate with them as well.
Yeah. So on that note, because we just obviously here in Philadelphia, we're looking at Vic Fangio. We're reading the stories coming out of Miami. Omar Kelly had a great story about all these players saying they didn't get along with Vic Fangio. Because he's such a younger guy in Kellen Moore, is it just almost a shoo-in that players liked him?
I think so, and I think he's a pretty mild-mannered guy. He's not the dude who walks in and pisses people off generally. And I think, because he was a college football legend, I do think that allows him to connect with players, and I could certainly see him connecting with Jalen Hurts on that level, or whatever the case may be. And he's a small school guy, maybe connecting with the aforementioned Dallas Goedert in that respect. And so a lot of these dudes, played with him on NCAA football, right? He's that kind of guy. And so there is that fun, kind of cool connection. But yeah, I think a polar opposite in terms of Vic Fangio, in terms of player connective tissue.
From what you know about Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore, if I don't know if you caught any of Nick Sirianni's press conference along with Howie Roseman, but for the first time we ever heard Nick Sirianni say it wasn't going to be his offense necessarily. Whoever the OC was going to be, it was going to be our offense. So how do you see Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni working together?
I think the world is fascinated to see Nick Sirianni work with anybody at this point in time. And I think in that respect, it probably works that Kellen is a bit mild-mannered. I'm fascinated because, it's hard to answer that question because I don't know what the Nick Sirianni offense really even is. I know Kellen Moore's offense is to be aggressive and to attack. And I see in your comment section, by the way, that is worth bringing up. That's part of what was the issue for Dak Prescott with all the interceptions now 2 years ago. You can only push the issue so much, which I think was the kind of spirit of what Mike McCarthy said in the quote that I talked about. And so I don't know if Nick Sirianni wants to be aggressive in that way. We know he's aggressive, right, when it comes to, goal to go, short situation, short down, yardage, whatever. But does he want to attack, fields vertically? Because it kind of seemed over the second half of the season, the collapse that the Eagles had, like they were really afraid. And this is my thought from my vantage point, but it seemed like they were afraid to let Jalen Hurts throw the ball. And that is not Kellen Moore's offense. He wants his dude to throw this ball 40 times a game, which is something that does lead to more turnovers just by nature of probabilities increasing. But I'm very fascinated to kind of watch how that, marries together, because when I think of Kellen Moore, I don't think of a high-powered run game. I know the Cowboys had Zeke Elliott, but the best running back Kellen Moore ever had was 2022's version of Tony Pollard, because he was a weapon in the passing game as well.
Okay. So I assume Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts to an extent, maybe even the offensive line possibly should be excited about bringing in a guy like this who is going to try to run up that score a little bit.
I think so. He's going to push the issue. He wants to, come out the gate at 60 miles an hour. This is one of those like Cedar Point, roller coasters that takes off in a matter of like 2 milliseconds or whatever. But that does create sometimes an uneven overall team disposition, which was the problem that Dallas had. Even with an incredible defense, if you come at it, you are trying to push it, and you have a quick turnover that goes against you, one of the bad kind of rubs of the green or whatever that football tends to bring, it can sink you rather fast. And that was the primary issue with the 2022 Cowboys. I do think the context also matters. That part of the reason Dallas moved on was they have Mike McCarthy as the team's head coach. And it would have been a colossal failure to never let him call the offense, just because that's how he made his bones in the NFL. So it wasn't just like the head coach in question wanted to move on. It was somebody who had a high pedigree of success on the offensive side of the ball specifically, and it just happened to work out to where they wanted to move on from Kellen. I say that to partly defend Kellen, because he did have a lot of success, and it did seem like Dak Prescott and everybody were a little bit miffed that the team moved on from him. But some of that was, Dak had known him since day one in his NFL career. Again, that Kellen was on the roster and everything that happened since then.
Two more for you. One, with knowing who was available, there was talk also about Cliff Kingsbury and also sitting down with him as the offensive coordinator and look at some of the other candidates that might have been available there. Do you feel like with Kellen Moore, overall, generally speaking, the Eagles made a good hire?
It's really possible. It does seem like a high variance sort of thing. He could come in and everything could sing and soar and be back to the 2022 version of Philadelphia from an offensive standpoint. But it's possible that, Dak Prescott made him. That's been the case for a lot of people throughout Dak Prescott's career. And that maybe Justin Herbert isn't as good as, the internet wants him to be. And the Chargers are just a disaster that couldn't overcome their Chargersness like this past season. And so I'm fascinated to watch. I do think that this is a really, fascinating sort of social focus group experiment, because if Jalen Hurts can't thrive, Dak Prescott has thrived over and over and over with Kellen Moore. And so this will kind of really prove who is the best. It isn't quite DeMarco Murray signing with the Eagles in 2015, but it feels like the first house in that neighborhood. If that
that's terrible. That is terrible. Once again, this is RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys. All right, .com. All right. One thing, just yes or no. Under center more? Could we see Jalen Hurts under center more for the Eagles, or is it going to be still the same old shotgun and pistol?
I think that's maybe up to Kellen's evaluation of Jalen, right?
Okay.
Because he is a different quarterback. Now, for what it's worth, now the draft process is an entirely different thing that wasn't just Kellen Moore in terms of his time with the Cowboys, but I'm sure you recall the Cowboys interviewed Jalen Hurts in the draft process leading up to his selection, obviously. And so they did, kind of value him and his skill set and find it to be interesting. And Kellen was a part of that process. And so I'm certain that he has probably a high level of respect for Jalen Hurts. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken this job. But I think the book on Jalen is out in a very weird way this offseason. And so how Kellen and everybody kind of chooses to move forward with him in 2024 is going to be really fascinating in an overall sense.
RJ, I really appreciate you coming on, especially on short notice with this story just breaking late last night. You guys, of course, can read RJ's story on Kellen Moore and the Philadelphia Eagles on bloggingtheboys.com. And literally moments ago from the time we went live, a story on Ron Rivera and the potential. Look how excited you are. The potential of him taking over the Dallas Cowboy defense if Dan Quinn ends up moving on.
I co-host a show with Brandon Gotton from Bleeding Green Nation. We call it the NFC's mixtape. And I have spent, at this point, literal years trashing Ron Rivera. And so therefore took every chance I could this past week. Oh my gosh, of course the Eagles are going to bring him in. the only thing I can really offer is by all measures, Ron Rivera seems to be an incredible human being. And obviously guiding, the Washington franchises and has not been an easy thing. But my goodness gracious, like what a just colossal failure this would be. And I want Dan Quinn gone, to be very clear, but not at this cost. This is cutting your nose off to spite your face. But maybe this is just a bunch of faceless people that the Cowboys are in 2024. I
know you got plenty of football to watch. And what's on the smoker again? What do you got on the smoker?
Chicken and sausage, going a little bit leaner today. No beef. Had the Cowboys been in, it would have been a Wagyu sort of situation, but that's never going to happen in my lifetime, at least.
At least he admits that part, ladies and gentlemen. At least he admits that part. My thanks again to RJ Ochoa for joining us. So the story broke late last night. I was actually at the Wings game. And at the Wings game, got done there around 10:15. Bolted into Center City because I was out of espresso, and I got my espresso from one place, and that's a little place called Grand Cafe Lockwood, okay? And on my way out, bloop, Adam Schefter, tweet, excuse me, that the Eagles are bringing in the Kellen Moore. And I went, well, that's interesting. And wanted to make sure I did the emergency show for you on Sunday, which we did. And then wanted to make sure for our normal audience, we still caught that interview, and there he is. Dak made Kellen Moore. A couple of things to unpack from the interview. Dak made Kellen Moore. Certainly possible. But I do believe in the bottom line. Whether or not it was his play calling that put Dak Prescott in the right position to make a play or the big play, or whether it was Dak Prescott just making the big play. Either way, he didn't get in the way of the success that they were able to have as an offense. And I'll take that right now when it comes to this Eagles offense and someone just not getting in the way of what this offense can do. Because when people brag to me about, they were the third and then they were the seventh-ranked offense in the NFL before they really hit that schneid there at the end of the season, when people brag that to me, my response. How many other teams have these weapons? How many other teams are coming off a season with a MVP caliber quarterback and those weapons? How many of those teams have the number one ranked offensive line in football? So you tell me you finished seventh. Cool. But let's also factor in the idea that you sure as hell weren't the seventh best offense as the season wound down. You are a bottom tier offense as the season was winding down. So that ain't a brag. So if Kellen Moore can find a way to, bring out the defibrillator and clear and get this offense going again, then all right, I'm happy to see it happen. As I said, look, the bottom line is he didn't get in the way. The bottom line is when you look at this guy from afar, he was supposed to be this offensive whiz. He was getting all this love and this praise. Any national broadcast that the Cowboys were on, and we know that there was a lot of them throughout his 4 years in Dallas, as their offensive coordinator. Oh, this guy is a brilliant play caller. He is a wizard and all that. And I'm thinking, okay, hold on a second. He's a wizard. He's a wizard. All right, well, he's a wizard. Okay. He's a wizard who has been there for 4 years. How come he didn't get a head coaching job? Too young? That's not really a thing anymore in the NFL. Good God, I'm now waiting for some college graduate to be a head football coach because he really knows numbers. All right. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I look at. He got an opportunity to go to the Chargers after he was let go. He didn't get a head coaching job after that. For reference, Jonathan Gannon was a defensive coordinator for 2 years. Now he's a head coach. Kellen Moore, 4-year offensive coordinator with the number 1 ranked offense. Not great. So how is he this wizard? He was calling plays for an offensive-minded head coach in Mike McCarthy and doing it rather well. I have my questions, but I will settle on what I think is a fair assessment of this. This is a good hire. It's a good hire by the Philadelphia Eagles. One more thing to unpack from the interview. Jalen Hurts afraid to throw the ball. Not Jalen Hurts being afraid to throw it, but Nick Sirianni having Jalen Hurts afraid to throw the football. Or him, let me rephrase that. Nick Sirianni being afraid to let Jalen Hurts throw the football. I don't necessarily agree with that. I thought they let it rip as far as this season went, and I thought that led to an increase of turnovers. Giving him the freedom to let it rip, I think, led to an increase in turnovers. And I feel like I've said this almost every show now, but the first interception he threw in the Seattle game with 8:15 left in the fourth quarter, that's an example of Jalen Hurts letting it rip. Now, that might be Jalen Hurts checking at the line of scrimmage and changing the play. That might be one of the many instances that has been highlighted to this point of Jalen Hurts having that freedom and taking full advantage of it. Maybe that's one of the instances he didn't have confidence in Brian Johnson's play call and went about it himself. But I have heard from fans throughout the season, especially if it's a tush-push situation, or they're in the red zone and Jalen Hurts is running so many quarterback draws. And I know that has been a huge problem with Eagles fans, myself included, where we have talked about screen plays. We have talked about the tight end screen, the bubble screen. We have talked about the tush-push, and we have talked about Jalen Hurts quarterback draws. That has been something that has been constantly talked about throughout last season and now. Maybe that's what RJ is referencing in being afraid to throw the football. Because really, when you look at this season, as we have, watching every single snap, I wouldn't say that they've been afraid to let him throw the football. They have done it more than they ever have with Jalen Hurts' career. So that's alarming. But in terms of those clutch situations, yeah, seeing him run the quarterback draw, seeing him not throw the ball downfield, instead just throw parallel to the line, that would be an example. When I think of afraid to throw the football, I think of afraid to throw it and let it rip downfield. When it comes to everything else, that's where you can say, okay, well, they don't want him to throw downfield, so the bubble screen is an easy completion. That's why Jalen Hurts himself has checked to it on his own so many times throughout his career. That, to me, is more of being afraid to throw the football than necessarily just throwing it and letting it rip. That's where I would draw the line, the difference. When it comes to quarterback draws, when it comes to the easy throws that are just right there for the taking, that's where, no, of course not, they're not afraid to let him throw the football. But when it comes to everything else, a little hesitant. Maybe that's why they're letting him run the football so much. I know a lot of people, especially going into this season, the first game of the year, I remember people's takeaway, and wasn't mine because it was just one game, but people's takeaway from the opening kickoff against the Patriots was that, oh, they're clearly trying to make Jalen Hurts more of a passer. And I'm like, okay. It's game one. Not going to jump to that conclusion, but all right. And yeah, it turned out to be kind of close as the season went on. We did see Jalen Hurts look hesitant to run at different times this season. There were times certainly where the quarterback draw was wonderful. And the best example of that was the overtime game against the Bills. He scampered up the middle for what I think it was 11-yard touchdown. Great. But yeah, you would like to see your quarterback maybe not put in peril as many times as the Eagles put him in peril. So yeah, afraid to throw the football, not 100%, I think, of a fair assessment of the situation, but certainly you can see how somebody would get that when you think about bubble screens, tight end screens, including those as really not dangerous throws. And then also looking at it from the amount of times that Jalen Hurts ran the football, you could see how somebody would come away with that. The job of Kellen Moore is going to be to infuse life back into this offense. It is not that difficult a task when you consider the personnel. Where it can become a difficult task is where you get back to so many people having their fingerprints on what happens on game day. So many people having influence. So many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to this Eagles offense. Hey, Nick Sirianni acting like he's almost stepping away from responsibility of having total control over the offense seems interesting. Want to see how that one works. Maybe one of the reasons they brought in somebody with 5 years of experience as a play caller under his belt already, maybe one of the reasons they did that was to say, all right, you know what? Here, you do it. You do the game plan. You call the plays. Nick Sirianni will just be here to be like, is it fourth down? Tush push. I called a play. Tush push. I just called a play. That's maybe that's what they're breaking it down to be. Maybe that's what they're breaking it down to be. Either way. It shouldn't be that difficult with the personnel you have here to have a successful year as an offensive coordinator and play caller with this Philadelphia Eagles team. Shouldn't be difficult. For me, one of the things I am going to be stressing is not just the overall numbers. Okay, if they have the number one ranked offense again, great. I'd love to see it. Situational football. I got to see that practiced. Go back to the first interception against the Seahawks. Go to the A.J. Brown touchdown in game one against the Commanders. All that, man. That's not good situational football. Good situational football. I want to see that from the offensive coordinator. And if you're telling me this guy likes to run up the score, here's what I'll say. He's very young, 34, 35 years old. Hopefully he has grown. Hopefully he has matured. Hopefully he has learned from the experience. Let's hope that's the case. And this is the other thing, an X factor, if you will, something you can't really measure, but he's got to have the respect of Jalen Hurts immediately. Not just the respect, but the trust of Jalen Hurts immediately. Because although it seemed like Jalen Hurts really loved Brian Johnson, didn't really seem to love his offense all that much. Didn't really seem to love his game plan or his play calling all that much. If those reports are true about Jalen Hurts, I wanted to do a lot of my own. And I know people jump to the comment that A.J. Brown made when he addressed the media after 2 weeks of not talking to the media. When he said, we improvised on that last Seattle play. Quarterbacks and wide receivers are going to do that. That doesn't mean they're doing it every single play. That's one example of them saying, we did. That's what we did. We improvised. But it has been a story over the last 2 years here, especially with Jalen Hurts getting comfortable doing certain things on the football field. And that's not terrible. But if you default to them too many times, that's terrible. And the play that Shane Steichen talked about when he was here, that Nick Sirianni has acknowledged, is that bubble screen, is that wide receiver screen, is that tight end screen that Jalen Hurts gets really comfortable running. And when he sees something the defense is taking away, he'll just go to that. That's his default. So a lot of times you can't blame Brian Johnson for it. You have to look at Jalen Hurts. So if Kellen Moore can kind of break through that comfort zone for Jalen Hurts and get him back to what he was throughout that MVP caliber season of a year ago, then we're going to be talking about potentially competing for that Super Bowl again. As soon as the Eagles fix what they have on defense. I think, look, from the grand scheme of things, overall, last couple of days, I think the Eagles made two good hires. You didn't get the Vic Fangio cover band to run this defense. You got Vic Fangio, the original act. Put the band back together as far as I'm concerned with that. You want him to be demanding? I think he's going to be demanding, Vic Fangio. And you need Kellen Moore to be able to have this offense pull focus and make sure that nobody is wasting their talent on this offense. Whoever the Eagles running back is going to be, whatever other offensive weapons they could add, nobody's wasting their talent, especially your franchise quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Defense side of the ball, we'll get to that. A lot of holes to fill there. So, yeah. Before I get to our chat check, I was going to say this for the morning rush, but I want to get into it now in case you guys have something to say. Something you want to say about it as well. But yesterday's conference championship games, wow. I think I actually saw a couple people on social media like, this is why football sucks. I'm like, what are you talking? This is why football's awesome. Like, you might be pissed that the 49ers are coming back, but if you're trying to be objective at all and just enjoy football, like, I wanted the Lions to win. I was rooting for the Lions. Kansas City and Baltimore, I just give me a good game, and for the most part, I got that. But good Lord. Ravens and Chiefs, as I said, first half of football, you're watching Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes do one insane thing after the other. That was an absolute, oh my goodness, that was incredible. Travis Kelce was incredible in that one. Tay was looking beautiful, as always. Right? It was a great game. I really enjoyed it. And I know it wasn't a high-scoring affair, but for me, it doesn't have to be a high-scoring affair for it to be a great game. But if I was to talk about what the hell happened, it would be the what the hell happened moment without question is Zay Flowers and his taunting penalty on Snead. You have 40 seconds left. 40 seconds left in that third quarter. You're down 10 points. Lamar Jackson hits you deep down the field, gets you at the 10-yard line. That means you have a couple of chances here to put the ball in the end zone, and it's still the third quarter. You haven't even flipped the frame to the fourth quarter yet where you'd only be down a field goal. You have the opportunity, catching that ball at the 10-yard line, take a couple of shots in the end zone, put up 7 points. You're only down a field goal going into the fourth quarter. You're feeling pretty damn good about that. But instead, Flowers decides, this is about me. Pushes Snead, flips the football, taunting penalty. They bust him back. They settle for a play at the 1-yard line where Zay Flowers again, and it's punched out by Snead, fumbles at the 1-yard line. Turnover, touchback, goes the other way. You had an opportunity without that taunting penalty to have a couple of shots at the end zone. Again, put up 7 points, be down only a field goal going into the fourth quarter. But because Flowers decided to flip that football above everything else, and that's what he got the penalty for. I don't think it had anything to do with pushing Snead off him. Snead was on it, pushed him off, no big deal. But the flip of the football, well, you can't do that. They throw the flag for taunting and ends up costing the Ravens an opportunity to win that football game. Absolutely unbelievable. Overall, that game was, I thought, just insane, especially the first half of play where it was just bonkers. One thing I did find interesting, though, and this is for the Swifties here. Did you guys see this number here? All right, so there's your girl, Taylor, okay? There's Tay-Tay. Look at this number. All right. Taylor Swift has generated, for the people that are like, why am I seeing so much Taylor Swift? This is why. All right. If you haven't cracked the code yet on this not at all difficult code crack here, okay? Taylor Swift has generated an equivalent brand value of $331.5 million for the Chiefs and the NFL per Apex Marketing. That includes print, digital, radio, TV highlights, as well as social dating. Oh, and social dating back to September of this year. Oh, excuse me, of last year. $331.5 million equivalent brand value. Now, look, I don't know what to compare that to. I was looking for comparisons, and I couldn't find them, but that just seems like a lot. $331.5 million simply by Taylor Swift being at the games, people talking about the NFL, people talking about the Chiefs, people posting about the Chiefs. I mean, that's the thing. These are all impressions that you're making on fans. And I watched the first half of the Ravens-Chiefs game at my house and then actually executed to perfection the halftime switch where you go to another location to watch the rest of the game. Went to my brother-in-law's. My brother-in-law has 3 daughters. Okay, I have a 4-year-old, Lil Toots. You've seen her. She's probably our most frequent guest on the show. You've heard, for the people on the podcast, you've heard her being terrified of Ursula. Anyway, so I'm watching this game. And the 4 girls are running throughout the room, ages between 4 and 7, and they're stopping to watch to see if they can get a glimpse of Taylor Swift at the game. And believe it or not, Travis Kelce, Red 87, they want to find him. They want to see him. And they were all geeked up. The wives that don't pay attention to football, they were paying attention to football. They're drawn into it. That's the Tay-Tay effect, ladies and gentlemen. And just one more time for the record, I am pro Travis and Taylor. Because I love, as I've said many times before, and I hope they have a beautiful life together, and they live together on top of a mountain. As for the second game, oh my God, Lions! It's very difficult to find myself in a position where I was really rooting hard for a team that I normally don't give a damn about, like the Lions. And I was rooting hard for the Lions just because I don't like the San Francisco 49ers. And now the Niners fans feel even more so like, oh, if we had Brock Purdy stay healthy against you, we would have beat the Eagles. We would have been in that Super Bowl against the Chiefs. But now we're in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. All right, well, now you have your crack at the Chiefs. All right, now you have your crack at the Chiefs, San Francisco. But I'm watching that game. They open up a 24-7 lead, the Lions do. Williams goes off on a run. Gibbs goes off on a run. Goff looks sharp. Everyone's looking incredible. Defense is looking strong. 24-7 at halftime. Kyle Shanahan, as we all know, 28-3. He got the brake speed off him by Tom Brady and the Patriots in that Super Bowl. Now he's got an opportunity to get to another Super Bowl by having to come back from 24-7. And that's exactly what he did. And they took advantage of every opportunity. Gibbs fumbles the ball. Dan Campbell can't coach his way out of a paper bag in that second half, unfortunately. It was dreadful. It was an absolute collapse. And opportunities taken by San Francisco. For instance, they come out of halftime, field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Made it up like nobody's business. And to compound the problem, Dan Campbell, instead of going for the game-tying field goal, a 47-yard field goal on a 4th and 3 with 7:30 left in the fourth quarter, he goes for it. They don't get it. Once again, to quote RG3, sometimes biting kneecaps means kicking the field goal. That would have been an opportunity to kick the field goal. I know a lot of people are curious as to what Dan Campbell had to say after the game. Here's what he had to say.
Getting our momentum and not letting them play long ball. They were bleeding the clock out. That's what they do. And I wanted to get the upper hand back, and it's easy hindsight, and I get it, I get that. But I don't regret those decisions, and that's hard. It's hard because, we didn't come through. It wasn't able to work out, but I don't. And I understand the scrutiny I'll get. That's part of the gig, man. But, we just didn't work out.
Don't regret it. I would assume he wouldn't. This is a guy that, as we know in that Dallas game, before the refs got a little too involved, this is a guy in that Dallas game, ladies and gentlemen, that we know, you want to go for the 2-point conversion? All right, go for the 2-point. Oh, there's a penalty. You got to drop back. I'm still going for the 2-point conversion. That's Dan Campbell. He was to Dan Campbell for Dan Campbell yesterday. All right? Not kicking the field goal there was bonkers. He either, as many people have said, either hates his kicker, has zero confidence in his kicker, or was terrified that his defense wasn't going to make a stop. And ultimately, that is a killer. We've been through issues in Philadelphia. I mean, against San Francisco, the Eagles did something similar where they just allowed touchdown after touchdown, 6 straight drives. Now you have Detroit against San Francisco, field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Who were you stopping? Who was he stopping? He's thinking he's got to keep this going because his defense is not going to stop that offense. Use the term again, that defense, unfortunately, for the Detroit Lions, the San Francisco 49ers cracked the code to that defense. They then had the cheat codes. They were making things happen left and right. Everything was going their way. The tip with who was it? Was it Jennings? No, it was Ayuk, Brandon Ayuk. Going down the middle of the field, tipped ball. He comes down with it, almost scores the touchdown, gets down at the 4-yard line, 5-yard line, whatever it was. Then he ends up scoring a touchdown on that same possession. They were getting the breaks at that point. Jahmyr Gibbs fumbling the football. Dan Campbell, overly aggressive. And San Francisco took advantage of every single ounce of it. So your Super Bowl matchup is Chiefs and 49ers. I didn't expect the Chiefs to beat the Ravens. Thought the Ravens were going to win that game. All season, the Chiefs have not. This is an interesting thing. The Eagles, and this is what separates, the great teams from the teams that are potentially, unfortunately, but have to acknowledge it, maybe the flash in the pan. The Eagles, even at 10-1, even at 10-3, especially at 10-3, they never looked like a Super Bowl contender. And as I've said, one time you could maybe say, oh, maybe, is the Miami Dolphins, is when they beat the Miami Dolphins. But I was never really looking at them like, oh, wow, this team can really do it. They're amazing, you know? No. The Kansas City Chiefs throughout this year, people have said, oh, they're good, but you know, they're not like the great Chiefs teams that we have seen. Yeah, they don't care. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have Patrick Mahomes. Simple as that. And although Patrick Mahomes wasn't like unbelievable with a 340-yard passing game and 5 touchdowns yesterday, it wasn't like that. They just got first downs when he needed first downs, hit his targets when he needed to hit his targets, and did just enough to win. And that's all that matters. Because they're never like, oh, well, this game was close, so we'll go to the team that had better style points. Like, no, that's not how it is. The Kansas City Chiefs, a lot of the same things were said about the Eagles this year were said about the Chiefs. Or, yeah, that's their record, and they look good, but are they really that good? Yeah, they're that good. Because really all that matters is the playoffs. And that's why we could bask in the idea of the Cowboys still being irrelevant, because, yes, they'll split with the Eagles. Yeah, fine, time and time again. But once they get to the playoffs, wah, wah. All right, let's get to our chat check. See how everybody's doing. It's fine morning. Sean Gillespie, good morning. Beat Miser? Okay. What's going on? Nice to see you. Daniel, what's going on? Good morning. Jordan, what's going on? Sean Gillespie. Kellen Moore is an improvement. That's not saying much, especially with Sirianni still here. Sean, I think that is where most people are at. And Ziggy says another one here, not bad hires. Yes, I agree. Kenneth Gainwell, Chiefs or 49ers. I'm going to go with the Chiefs just because screw the 49ers. That's why. Dick to the Sky. What's up, Dick? Great name. The hell to both of them. All right. Beat Miser. Kellen Moore may turn out to be a good fit as our offensive coordinator. He can help out Jalen like he did with Dakota. We have a plethora of offensive weapons. I see him utilizing Dallas. Oh, Dallas Goedert. Okay, yes. All right, that makes more sense, yeah. Ziggy, the route combos he had Allen on were magical. I'll have to go back and look at that. Optimistic but an upgrade, says Kevin Jones. Yeah, I would put that in the same category. I put myself in that same category. Sean Killer, what's going on? Holy moly, we're going to be running in motion? Does Sirianni know what that is? I don't know. I hope so. We saw it a little bit towards the end of the season. Sean Gillespie, again, the Eagles are just satisfied with being contenders and having a deep playoff run, not winning the Super Bowl. Sean, it's kind of how it feels right now, unfortunately. Don't know about Kellen Moore, says Mike. Again, 5 years experience as an offensive play caller. Okay. 5 years of experience as a coordinator. Finished in top of the league in yards twice. Finished top 6 in the NFL 3 of those 5 years in terms of points. And he has scored the most points in the NFL once. He's got a 4th place finish, 1st place finish, 17th place finish, but that was with Andy Dalton. And a 6th place finish in that regard. So there you go. Those are the numbers on him. April! Good morning, April. What's happening? Babs! As far as the Lamar Jackson way doesn't win big playoff games, Mahomes didn't do much to win yesterday. Yeah, just like I said, did enough. Did enough to win. Alex, what's going on? I can also see the Eagles not renewing Sirianni's contract and promoting Moore to head coach. See, now that would be interesting. I was trying to think of coaches that had success and were not renewed. I can't. I'm trying to think. Jimmy Johnson? Like who? I'm trying to think of a scenario where there was a CEO head coach. The team did well, fired him, promoted a coordinator. That's why this is such a dangerous cycle to be in. Mihai Sanchez. What's going on? Oh, let me get this one first. What's going on? Morning, everyone. Yesterday showed how rigged the NFL is. I will not watch the Super Bowl. Not at all Taylor Swift and Kelsey's fault for the attention, but they are no more superior than anyone. Mihai, I disagree. You're talking about 4 Super Bowls here. It's only hockey and basketball season right now. All right, well, fair enough. Let's go. How about that job by the Sixers over the weekend? No Joe, no Maxey. Oh, April. Music to my ears. 12 days till pitchers and catchers. Let's go. Mike, yep, Nick will be able to strong-arm Kellen as I expected. This will be a pissing contest, in my opinion. I had that. So on that note, Mike, I had that thought because Kellen's young, but he's got experience. Like, Kellen has a lot more to do with his team's success than Nick Sirianni has had to do in his time as a coordinator or head coach. Like, he's had more say on what goes on. So that's an interesting thing. Young, but very experienced. And let's not act like Nick Sirianni is doing this single-handedly. Let's not act like that. Like, this could have very well have gone in the direction that we had talked about of Nick Sirianni sitting in front of Jeffrey Lurie and just be like, all right, Jeff, what do you want to do? And Jeff's like, well, I'm going to make sure that I hire an offense coordinator who's got a lot of experience and has emotional intelligence. Like, that's probably what happened. And this is probably a higher up deal. Like, can you work with Kellen Moore? Nick Sirianni's like, I'll work with Fozzie Bear if I have to. If it means waka waka, if I have to go up there and actually call plays with him, or he has to call plays, I just have to kind of oversee. Yeah, we'll do that. I don't know why Fozzie Bear came to mind. I apologize. Probably my ADD. What's up, Daz? Good morning, fellas. How are we feeling about Kellen? I feel good. A good hire. I can feel good. My concern is the cooks in the kitchen. Cowboys by nature. Okay. Kellen runs a lot of option plays. It's a very cerebral offense. All right, cool, man. I can go with cerebral. Seeing him and Sirianni in the same room should be interesting. Mike Fittery, why do you think Mike McCarthy playbook and Dak got better? Kellen Moore. After Kellen Moore, you mean? Yeah, that is another concern. Smelled a rat says, is it Rico Khan? What's going on? Smelled a rat of 49er and Lions game. Possibly. Oh, interesting. Mr. Kima. Kellen Moore is a collector of plays. He has no offensive scheme or game plan. All right, well, you know what? That's supposed to be Nick Sirianni's job, right? Game plan? I need that. Here's the thing. In going back and listening to a little bit more of Sirianni, not more, but listening to it again of Nick Sirianni's press conference and all that stuff. Like, I need it because Tim McManus asked a question. If I am, and listen, this is a grasping at straws attempt to understand what the hell happened in that horrid press conference. But as I reflect on it more, if you're Nick Sirianni and somebody is asking you, the head coach of a football team, hey, what is it you do here? Okay, let's go back to that for a second. If Nick Sirianni is being asked, what do you do? You're going to be a little offended. You're probably going to be a little caught off guard. And as we all know, a press conference is not Nick Sirianni's natural habitat. So I need it asked again. Not what do you do here, but specifically, Nick, you have said in the past that with not calling plays, you're responsible for the game plan. Is that still the case? I need that spelled out in big, bold font and underlined that he's still doing that. Just to know that that's still his thing. If it's not, then it's not. And he's just a strict CEO head coach. Tush push. Good play call, coach. Thanks. That's what I need to know. Purdy got carried again? What? Purdy got carried again. That wild catch could have been another. Oh, yeah. You're right. Yeah. Carried again by the team. Hey, man. Good game. Look, game managers are game managers. They don't make the mistakes that'll kill you. And he broke off a couple of runs that were pretty awesome. Mahomes does it all the time. Absolutely. Stoney, what's going on? Giving Hurts the freedom to let it rip was proving it was more. It was. Giving Hurts the freedom to let it rip was proving it was go improvise is what caused everyone to know what was going to happen, and it showed. Probably. I think I got that. Bye, Nick, says Rico. April, we were driving to Florida and watching in the car. They were great games. You're driving to Florida and watching in the car? What's the setup, April? Because I really want one of them Sprinter vans that you could like turn into a living room on wheels. I really want one of those with a nice TV. I'm jealous. My wife in her childhood, she had one of them like big conversion van type Johns that had the little TV up there, right? My buddy Sean had one of those, and we used to always want to get carpooled by Mrs. Casey because they had that. You know, it's like, wait a minute, I could watch Tommy Boy. What? I can watch Dumb and Dumber. What else do we have here? Flowers. Flowers under the OBG wing. OBJ wing. Wang. That's scratch that. It's a family show. Farzy, stop blocking your face with the text. Why? I enjoy the. Hold on, come on. You don't enjoy when I pop my eyes up over it. I think it's funny. Anyway, forced to root for KC. Swift marketing and Kelsey shot the arm. No, come on. I'm rooting for Tay, baby. Wait, couldn't find the show link earlier? Guess I'll have to watch the replay later. What? Oh, April. Oh, that's awesome. Tell Lilith I'm at Disney, and I will tell Ursula, stop being so mean. Oh, I will pass that along. That is great. Dad's Lions choked big time. They absolutely did. Jeremy, what's up, Jeremy? Dan Campbell coaches like he's playing Tecmo Bowl. This guy would hit on 20 play. Playing Jack. Jesus, I don't know. Playing blackjack, he would hit at 50. This is where I disagree with analytics. Momentum is a huge thing, especially on the road. Jeremy, you're absolutely right. And Jeremy, thank you again for letting me know about Kristen F. and Harris. For those that caught the show on Friday, Kristen did have her first treatment. I texted with her. She's in good spirits, man. She is I'm going to say this, and I say this glowingly as a friend of mine. She's a tough broad. She also taught me how to do a time step in the art of tap dancing many years ago in high school. I do owe her that video. I got to send her a video of me doing a timestamp, Jeremy. So that's coming. Don't you worry. That's coming. No, that will not be for show use. That will be private use in my circle of personal friends. Iceberg Slim, what's going on? Mike, Kellen Moore is a better play caller than Cliff Kingsbury. SP Lou, what's going on? Nice to have you. And go Sixers! Anyone just kick field goal anymore? No, field goals are lame. Luke Skylifter. Farzy, as much as it pains me to say, I have to sadly root for the Chiefs. Anyone but the Red Cowboys. I'll root for the Chiefs. I'll be happier if the Chiefs win. Kellen Moore returned this offense around, was a scapegoat for Dallas, says Dirty D. It's quite possible. Pamela, what's up, Pamela? What's the difference between Laurie and Norman Brayman? Laurie's not in France. Is that who was it? Norman Brayman was the guy in France, right? Do I have that right? I think I have that right. It's a little before my time. This is going to bother me. Because like Leonard Toast was before Brayman, and Brayman was owning the team at the time. Buddy Ryan was here, known for owner of the Philadelphia 85. Yeah, okay. Norman Brayman, the guy in France. Yeah, okay. I did have that. Lex the Best, good hire. Billy Bob Joe, can you think of a lesser CEO coach model than Nick Sirianni? I can't. It'd be difficult. People look at Mike Tomlin. I'm like, yeah, but the guy has the track record, man. Oh, God. Wow. Adam, what shocked me was Purdy seemed to run/scramble better than Jalen. I think his knee injury is worse than we knew. I think so, too, and I think it's bothered him for a long time. Wow. Hold on. Dumb and Dumber equals Eagles press conference. There you go. Yes, Brayman. was the car dealer who was super cheap. Thank you, Adam. Remember, Dak still stinks. I think that's a good way to end on that. I think that's a great way to end on it. Thanks, everybody in the chat. You guys are wonderful, as per usual. Let's get to our morning rush brought to you by Sky Motorcars, SkyMotorcars.com. You know the Super Bowl. It's set, ladies and gentlemen. Your Philadelphia Flyers need to get back on track here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games they've lost in a row. They are off. They have the break right now, so they're off for a week. They got the Panthers coming up on the 6th at 7 o'clock in South Philadelphia. As for your 10-9-8 76ers, they're back in action tonight, 10 o'clock West Coast trip after they lost to the Nuggets, 111-105. And the Pacers, 134 to 122. They got the Trailblazers tonight at 10 o'clock. So I'll be watching that. No doubt about it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. It's been the Farzy Show, presented by the Game Time app. Check out the Game Time app. Download it to your phone. Use promo code Farzy when you go to buy your tickets. Then you get $20 off your first purchase on the Game Time app. Thanks to RJ Ochoa for joining us. Much appreciated. Be back with you guys tomorrow. Talk all things Eagles, Sixers, the whole shebang. You know the deal. See you guys then. My name is Mark Farzetta. This is the Farzy Show presented by MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Catch you guys tomorrow. See you.